Hello. Ah, Welcome to our day. I believe it's 5 of daily embodiment for the month of December. And I've been doing this every morning at 9 a.m. and then filming at 9 and then posting at 9 a.m. the next day. Today, I had the wind knocked out of me. Like all of my sales were down this morning. I had a really full day yesterday, fuller than I've had in a long time. I've been in this like creative, emotional, somatic, like nervous system recovery for a really long time. I feel like a highly sensitive person. If you haven't looked into that, you can look up HSP, highly sensitive person. And learning to live a slower, more steady, and patient life is turning out to be critical for me from what my nervous system needs. I keep wanting to like fix myself so I can go engage in life. And I'm also recognizing that perhaps that's just not something that's going to happen for me. And I need to acclimate to a different kind of expectation for myself and a different way of living. And self care for performers is in part a response to that. But also, it's a kind of unpacking for myself of all the ways in which I think I kept feeling wrong or bad or like there was something broken about me for having different needs than a lot of people do and being more sensitive than certain groups of communities might be. Let me go put in some food into my oven and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm making myself some food. Today I woke up in the morning and I got up for like 10 minutes and then I was exhausted and I went back to sleep for several hours and I just knocked out and had really intense and vivid dreams and feel like I'm processing a lot of emotions. Yesterday I had a full day. I was out in the morning helping a friend with some things, doing some administrative work out in the community, which both felt good and also is just I need recovery time anytime I do something around people or in public settings. And then also I had a beautiful performance to go to. A friend of mine invited me to see some of their work that was in a performance, and it was wonderful. And there were some other choreographers whose work that I also know because either know them or because they're just extended community members. And it was really nice to get out and enjoy an evening out. It also made me feel a lot of different things, I think, because the theater was very packed, which is great. And also, it's like the first time I think I'd been in a theater where masks weren't required. And so they were optional. And so there's just also this new way of being that's similar to an old way of being. And it was also for a college performance. And so there was a degree of seeing all the students do their faculty choreography and remembering what it was like as a college student for me, going to shows that my friends were in and watching their pieces and how much community was centered during that time in my life. And truly, I really loved a lot about my time studying the performing arts in college. There was like this just built-in nest of an experience for creativity, and that felt really good. Yet also, I had a tendency to take too much on and too many credits, too many units. I had like over 30 one semester. My roommate was just the same, like overtaking. Um, and and so even as it was this wonderful experience, there was also this like doing too much. And my body was constantly breaking down. I was always sick. I was always injured. I was always in and out of the doctor. And so even though was in certain classes with people for a fair amount of time, I would miss a lot of the technique classes and then feel like I was falling behind and then not understand, not be able to keep pace with the sort of the the language and the lingo of the different ballet classes, because I had like a severe gap in my training because I started late, but my mom was a teacher, a dance teacher. My dad was a martial artist. So it looked like I had more training than I did. And that is a weird thing. In some ways, there's positives to that, but in other ways, there's just like a learning gap that I've had in a lot of my experience, which creates some dysregulation inside of me of feeling not ready and not prepared. And like I'm behind, but can people tell I'm behind, or do they not know that I'm behind? Is it good to tell them that I am, or is that not something to say? There's all this different kinds of like cultural dynamics too, in class to class, how the culture of the class that the teacher sort of creates and cultivates, it varies widely. And I realize in hindsight, while I went to like a bigger program at UC Irvine, I think I would have done better in like a smaller, more intimate program that had classes that were more exploratory and investigative. And I, at the time, really wanted to like go forward with like technique. And that was really important to me. And now so much of what I do with self-care for performers is like, let's unwind all of the pain that technique has, like rigid, formulaic, constrictive kinds of technique. There are all sorts of different types of techniques, and some of them are specifically about deconstructing. That's still a technique. But certain kinds of rigid techniques that have to do with like more of like a perfection attainment and skill set that has felt maybe out of reach for us as performing artists, if this is you. So like relating this to the why we're here together. A lot of what I want to do is recover from that and find a sense of safety in community, because I think what the performing arts has to offer in such a beautiful way is that we often can do community really well, and community with creative energy is just, you just can't get any better than that. It's fantastic. And so I want to find a way where those of us who either are retired artists or are currently pursuing our professional career and just have fatigue and burnout and maybe need cycles where we're still getting our needs met, but we're not actively either actively working or trying to work, or we, even as we're working and trying to work, we might not be getting our needs met. And so we need a place to go where the actual core needs are fulfilled. So I think this is like the self-care component of like why it's not just self-care for everybody. It's not just like healing for the like for performance abuse, right? Because there's a lot of that I'm also doing, but there is this like bridge and space between like self-care, learning how to be kind to ourselves, learning how to treat ourselves in a caring way, which many of us don't do, especially and just culturally in the different, because I go between different performance practices, but especially in dance culture, very targetedly and specifically, a lot of what happens in dancers' minds is in our bodies is so harmful and hurtful to our well-being. And so I really want to cultivate a space where we can be aware of those harmful dynamics that are playing out inside of us, and also interpersonally between us in our classrooms or in our communities or in our creative processes, whether they're spoken or unspoken, whether they're microaggressions or like really big glaring challenges. But that we have a way to, at least for ourselves, recognize and maybe even more broadly have a larger conversation and community about it. But I think it has to start with our own individual recognition of our personal experience or experiences. And oftentimes that goes back to early childhood. And I come back to this time and time again, because it's so prevalent right now. It's very topical. So you maybe or maybe not have, but there's a lot of information available widely right now about intergenerational trauma and recovery from early childhood adverse experiences, and learning how to heal oneself, whether that's in relationship with a therapist or with one's own spiritual practices or therapeutic modalities that you fold into your way of being a person in the world. Okay. I like to ramble at you. I think it's so fun. I am a big journaler. Have mentioned a bunch of times, whether or not you've been here for it, that my creative recovery really began after stepping away from a couple of really big, impactful projects where I was overgiving, overfunctioning, under earning, and my core needs were like not present at all in those dynamics. And I had like a really massive burnout and really hurt myself psychologically, spiritually, physically. And I was in like a 6-year long recovery from that. It was starting to feel really good, a lot better. And then COVID came around, and there's been a lot of reactivation of certain triggers and resurgence of certain fears and patterns that I'm seeing on a deeper level, and also just a lot of personal, family, and community challenges that have been present as well in my life to just bring a lot of the pattern recognition to the forefront and really learning about how I have been trying to build forward a career or a life or a connection or relationships that were not really they weren't on solid ground because I wasn't bringing my full, authentic, truthful self into the mix because I didn't feel like it was allowed to be there. So many of us are socialized to hide or compartmentalize pieces of us in order to be in connection. And a lot of performing arts industry culture is also, you show up, you have your industry standards and you're supposed to meet them, but it's sort of like this sort of like testing almost, as opposed to relating and really finding points of matching connection. And I want to change that with how I move in the world and how I relate to community and how I relate to my understanding of what industry even means, and business can be a sense of belonging. And whether I go out and do performance again in the future or not, I do live in a society where resources need to be exchanged, monetary resources for goods and services, right? And so because I'm recognizing I have so much misaligned to moving about society in a way that I understand technically keeps me alive, keeps me engaged as a functioning society member, and really starting to look at myself as potentially having like long-term disabilities or disorders that cannot be integrated in certain fashions into a kind of neurotypical Western world in capitalism, and trying to find a way forward for myself that might work. So this is part of that, just learning how to share more openly and vulnerably with you all online, and seeing what match cards might be out there. So today, essential art therapy exercises. We're going to work from the same book we've been working from, which is Leah Guzman's book, all about effective techniques to manage anxiety, depression, and PTSD. All valuable things in creative recovery. Okay. I wanted to do a simpler one today, so I picked a shorter practice, and this is from the writing section of the book. And it's called Fill Your Cup. The benefits are it develops self-esteem, which I could use a little bit of these days, self-awareness, which I feel like maybe sometimes I have too much of, and coping skills can also use definitely some of those. So, and maybe you can too, which is why you're here. So welcome. Let's do this together. Many people think of self-care as the maintenance of our physical body. For example, bathing or getting a haircut. These activities Yes, these activities may feel great, but nurturing the inner self is just as important. Our society drives a culture of rushing around, tackling to-do lists, and constantly multitasking. I'm just exhausted just reading that. This exercise will help you focus on slowing down. In fact, by reading this book, you are already moving in the right direction. How would you like to fill your cup? What a nice question to ask oneself. How would you like to fill your cup? By nurturing yourself first, you're able to give more to others. If you have a full cup, you have more to share. So here we are filling my cup so that I can share with you. And hopefully those of you who are watching this can utilize these skills, these exercises, these prompts, and this embodiment practice as a way to also fill your own, or at least have an invitation to filling it. Yeah. And again, if you'd like to join over again, I haven't mentioned it today, but I've been trying to mention once or twice in every video that over on Patreon, I'm going to do printouts of each day's practice. So you can download that. There's an accessibility tier if resources are a challenge for you, so you can still be involved. And if you join that, there's also access to a free Facebook group that you can join and have lifetime access to, where you can practice sharing pieces of your self-care and creative recovery within there in a safe and inclusive community that is intended to practice, for us to practice with each other, communicating from kindness and from a place of empathy and from a place of encouragement and willingness to be vulnerable. And it's okay. And learning how to share hard times from a place of boundaries, personal boundaries, so containment boundaries, where we don't feel like we are sharing more than we're really comfortable with, and or that we're sharing more than maybe others might have the capacity to meet us in, and be hard for us when they don't match back or meet back. Yet also inviting the harder things that just need a place to come through and have a caring witness to be present, if that's something that needs to happen. Because so often I think there's just a lack of resources. Even if you have really good friends, there's just only so much. Even if you have a therapist, that's usually only, sometimes there's more intensive practices, but usually like once a week or so, sometimes less, sometimes more. We need a place to support ourselves on our healing journey that can feel like we can go to it when we just have something that we want to share, that we want to ask for, that we want to reach out, or just send a little drop of connection into sort of like a pond, like a wishing well. So maybe this can be a little bit of like a wishing well for creatives, a creating well of sorts. I have the self-care garden. Maybe there's a creating well as well that will crop up in the way that I talk about what I do. And who knows? I've been playing with that for a while. I like the way that feels. And I like that there's water in the wishing well. And my name, Marissa, means of the sea. My last name, Moses, means drawn from the water. So I'm learning to be more grounded and rooted and understand all of that. And also just my natural essence is very water-based so, and fire-based. I have a lot of fire in my astrology chart for those of you who are into astrology. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Step 1, draw a large cup in your journal. So if you're doing this in journal, you're going to draw that. I am going to do it in embodiment. So I'm going to just draw a large cup. So this is my teacup. It's teacup. It's this whole area. This whole, you know what? The whole room, the whole freaking room. I am inside of a teacup. This is my teacup. I like that I decided it was a teacup. I like to drink tea. Didn't say it was a teacup. I chose that. Okay. Draw a large cup in your journal. Write down self-care activities inside your cup. Include activities you can do to feel good throughout the day. For example, you might include how you like to enjoy a cup of tea, take a bath, play with paint, schedule a therapist appointment, review your goals, buy yourself some flowers, or take a walk. Okay. I chose the light one today because I need a lighter practice because this daily embodiment practice has been intense for me. Uh Practicing that kind of vulnerable space is a lot. Okay, I'm gonna move some things around. Hang on. Okay, I'm in my teacup. So I am now filling my teacup with self-care practices. And I have this soft, smooth, fluid nature. I really like the floor. The floor is creaking again. I have this soft nature, and it's like I want to just be a little bit in dream space. I've struggled with this particular piece, this particular point, because sometimes when I go into dream space, I do feel so good there. And other times I have a hard time coming back. And sometimes in dream space, there can be a bit of like a dissociation that happens. And also sometimes in dream space, I feel even more connected and attuned to my body. So it's this space of wanting to integrate the dream space really truly in a very helpful and nourishing way for myself, where I feel really connected. I'm just going to let myself move for a bit. This might be more of like an interpretive dance moment. Ooh, almost fell over. I felt so good and so fluid. And then my base sort of came out from under me. So I'm aware that, like, with my eyes closed and then to feel the fluidity, I will lose my equilibrium a little bit. So maybe what happens if I keep the quality, but I leave my eyes open, does that help with my balance? And there's like a practice I do sometimes in like a ballet class where I will, for the balance at the end of like a bar exercise, or you're just maybe in releve, maybe in susu, and then you just close your eyes and you practice balancing from there. It makes it harder to balance with your eyes closed. And also, if you can learn how to utilize other senses, it's still possible. And what happens is there can sometimes be like a fear that comes up, an uncertainty. That's the floor creak. Step up here. An uncertainty, a trepidation that comes into the liveness of the body. And there's like a breathing through that, releasing, relaxing through that, trusting through that, allowing the possibility that you can utilize imagery of really feeling above and below yourself and outside of yourself, wide to wide, while still being totally embodied in oneself. And then from there, you can balance with your eyes closed. And yesterday's practice for the strength shield, I remember my first 3 quadrants of my shield, my eyes were closed. Only in the final 4th quadrant did they open, and that was sort of like a overarching view assessment of how all the pieces and parts work together, and then who I was or wasn't going to connect with as like an offering point, as a willingness to see my relational path or pattern or process of coming in and out of being witnessed. But from here, it's like, I just want to be aware of the strain of my eyes I want to back up. I know I left my little stool back here, but I want to keep my eyes closed. So I backed up till I can feel it at my heels. And then from there, I'm going to sit down. And I just want to place my hands on my eyes. I feel like this is a recurring experience for me of like meeting a new witness or softening the gaze or like letting myself off the hook with the focus and the targeting. Even as like, I know where I want to go. I know that there is a direction. And also, can I let myself be free along the way? And then my eyes opened when I said that. Can I let myself be free along the way? If this is my self-care cup, that's a question that I want to keep finding the answer to as a form of self-care. If I'm in my self-care cup, and I let myself be free along the way. How can I let myself be free along the way? I now receive what I need in order to free myself along the way. That felt good to say that. So we're going to explore that. And I want to I used to do this at the bottom. I would skim the bottom of a pool. My grandma had a swimming pool when I was growing up. One of my grandmas did. And my favorite thing was to swim along the bottom of the pool all the way from one end to the deep end and then all the way up the other side and I would swim like a mermaid so I could feel the basin of the pool sort of like glide along my skin as I would I don't know, track with it, I guess. Ripple. Like I want to feel the edges. Feeling the edges feels good. It helps me know. It helps me feel contained. It helps me know that I'm held. Feels nice. Yeah. I don't know that I need more than that. That's really nice. I want to feel the edges. So I'm going to sit down. Yeah. Just going to integrate that for a moment. Feel free to join me if you want. Just take a moment and take a couple of breaths, be with the body, and feel like the message or the possibility or the opportunity or the invitation from what I just walked, what I just embodied is available. What if that were true? How would that feel? How does that feel knowing that is true? To feel the edges, to feel the caress of the containment, to feel the structure of the integrity of what's holding you. That's such a beautiful thing to be able to really recognize from an embodied place, to really feel held. Okay, questions for a discussion. You need to nourish to flourish. How are you taking care of yourself? I want to walk that. You need to nourish to flourish. How are you taking care of yourself? How am I taking care of myself? Well, over here, we know I spend time here. I've been telling you guys. I spend time here in my nest today, just like this, watching some of my favorite creators on YouTube, all of whom live very nature-based lives as women, often in more secluded areas, or adventure expressions and experiences, and bridging the time between like quiet patient lifestyle and going on adventure. And I like that expression. Ooh, yeah, I like that expression. It's like I want more of that into my life. So I'm watching that so that I can feel more of that, so that I can allow the possibility that my life can carry forward in that way too. That's how I'm taking care of myself. How beautiful. Okay. Do you allow yourself time to play, relax, and enjoy the moment? Oh my God. Why is this such a hard question? I I feel like I'm constantly trying to do those things, but I'm like trying to do those things, which creates pressure, which creates resistance, which creates stress, which creates like friction that doesn't need to be there, but it's like I don't know how to exist without it. I mean, I do because I've had pockets of time where I have, and it feels amazing, and I want more of that. And I am living into a life and way of moving about the world that I know through these practices do lead to more of that because I've lived it and I've researched it, and it's a pattern that is pretty consistent in my own life and for others who've walked similar paths. So there's that. And I just want to be here and embody that for a moment. It's like holding this image, this vision of this knowledge that it's okay that I'm not there right now. And it's okay to know that I know where I'm headed and I know where I'm going. And I know that the practices I'm showing up to and devoting myself to on a regular basis are practices that help align me to the experience and expression of being in this place that feels, I don't need to tell you what it feels like. I just want to feel it, what it feels like. It's like not being afraid to receive, not being afraid that my needs won't be met, not being afraid that I have needs to begin with, not being afraid that I can't meet someone else's needs, not being afraid of their needs to begin with. Yeah. Okay. And then we have, what is the first self-nurturing activity you are planning to do? Schedule it. I am going to what? Spin in a circle. Self-nourishing. I am going to. Oh gosh, I just had this beautiful idea. What if I could find a pool? What if I could find a pool to swim in? What if I could just explore being in the water again? Oh my God, I love to be in the water so much. It feels so good. I'm hesitant to say that because the thought of actually scheduling that, figuring that out, and then scheduling it feels like a lot to me. Yet there's a lot of things that I do on a regular basis that nourish me in a certain way. And this particular one feels like a stretch. And I am doing a a whole like December daily challenge for myself with this embodiment series of daily embodiment videos. So perhaps I will stretch myself to include in this month of December a swim in a pool. So I'm going to find a pool, I'm going to schedule a time, and I'm going to go swim. I'm going to find one where I can explore what it feels like to be on the base of the pool again, like I was when I was a little girl. I like that as a very practical way to practice self-care and to reconnect with the pleasures of just how I used to like to play as a kid. Okay. So this is all for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your time. And whenever it is that you're watching this, these are going to stay up and be resources to continue to come back to. I know like 30 practices in 30 days is my challenge. Is it 30 or 31? How many days do we have in December? I don't know. Let me look. We have 31. So 31 practices in 30 days, 31 days. That's a lot. So I'm doing my best to keep up with the pace of it. And also my goal is to just be able to have these 31 practices that are going to be available both online on YouTube consistently and also in the self-care garden on Patreon for self-paced practice and resource guides for you guys to connect with at your leisure, at your timing, and you can take a look at the practices and see which ones you need on which day. And maybe the titles can be a little descriptor for you of what you might find inside for your own needs for nourishment and connection. So long-term resources just going to be available. And that's what I'm building more of and more into, these sort of, they call it like evergreen content, right? Where it's always green, it's always available, it's always going to be a resource for those out there in the internet lands to connect with and to be able to find value with. So I hope you find value with it. If you do, let me know in the comments below. I would love to know what lands for you, or if you integrate into your own practice some of these things, or if you've done practices similar to this and what it reminds you of. And always remembering to practice kindness with how you speak about yourself, about me, and about anyone else who might show up in the comments below. And yeah, and I have my own practices that I've needed to work through, and this might be something for you too. And just so you know, for your own sense of felt safety in my containers as well, is that one thing that has helped me online, specifically on Instagram, is you can have comments reserved for only people who follow you. So if you get a lot of comments from people out there on the internet as a performing artist, and maybe you have a lot of really embodied and delicious photos or videos out there, and you are uncomfortable with the kind of comments that you might get from strangers who don't know who you are and speak about you or to you in a very objectifying or devaluing way, that's one way to limit the amount of that kind of flooding of engagement. And the thing is also, when you do start to limit the access that people have to you, often what will happen is there's going to be a decrease in engagement period. And so there's a relational component of being with one's self, one's awareness of core values and eventual goals, and knowing what one's core needs are in the moment in order to feel safe enough to keep showing up, and also matching that with the little addictive ego pinging kind of thing that social media is designed to keep us addicted to, as a sort of like rush of adrenaline every time we get a new like, a new follow, a new comment, a new this, that, and the other, right? So just be aware of, in your body, how you're relating to engagement and responses, and to be willing to meet yourself in your actual needs, as opposed to what you think you're supposed to want or need, or whatever sort of hit or addiction or sort of like high of a moment from just getting engagement period can bring to the system. That's how we're wired. We're designed for that. So yeah, I think that's it. Holiday healing special, 3 hours sliding scale for those who want some personal connection time. We can do it over Zoom. If you're in Los Angeles, there's the potential for meeting in person as well, in a studio for practice, or something like that. So let me know. And then I have my 3-month, 6-month, and year-long mentorship cycles that I'm working with people for. And it is a mentorship in that my perspective is going to be a part of the holding pattern, yet it's also very inclusive of any personal practices that feel right and good to you, while holding space for the cycle of time that we make an agreement to step into, right? And then also, just for you all to flag that one of the things that I am moving through in my own recovery is recovery from like a cultural religious trauma, and the use of the God word doesn't fly inside of my personal needs and container. And so so of course everyone's allowed to have whatever relationship they have to whatever they want, but as I'm holding space, I protect myself from the use of that word, and will often inquire and question ways that word might be able to be deconstructed in the way in which each body relates with it. So consider that as you consider whether or not my space would be the right space for you. But I do work from a place of being very body inclusive. So what is happening in one's body is important to me. And any resistance that comes up, or fear that comes up, or uncertainty that comes up, I really value the practice of holding space for that while retaining connection to a sort of mindfulness on my end and on anyone who I'm working with's end as well. So mindfulness, also embodiment, also allowing a bit of a creative channel to come through and out so that you feel like you can trust your core essence more and more in the world, even as there might be a deconstructive element to the practices that I personally find most valuable in my life, and how I might share those with you. So this is me saying goodbye for today. And I will see you tomorrow for our next embodiment practice in our daily December challenge. See you next time. Bye-bye.